Hi, this is James, and this is a video in my series before my EP drops April 18th, so check it out when it comes out. Old Conversations by James Coe. And for this video, what I want to talk about is being in your prime creatively, or like when artists hit their music prime. This is something that I've mentioned before, but something I kind of dislike because there's frequent mention of this now when it wasn't really a thing before, which is like the idea that someone enters their prime creatively, like usually 28 to 33, and that's when an artist makes their best work, and that's when you should expect the most from them. And after that, they're allowed to just be maybe a gimmick artist once they're older, or when they're younger, they should do, maybe not as nuanced, but they should be pushing the boundary, And it's very like almost stereotyping based on age for a lot of it. And it's just proven time and time again not to be true. And like, I can't deny that there is something to be said about when everyone agrees in a certain era of an artist being their best. When someone talks about like a band like the Rolling Stones, no one's going to say that their current era is their best. That would be strange. But I think a marker of a great artist is when people disagree on what era of them is the best. If you are so good that people will say you had 3 albums in this year, in these years, and they're the best, and someone else goes, no, those are great, but these are better. That's insane, and not many artists get that sort of treatment. When I think of that, I think of like Prince gets that treatment. I think Bowie, I think the Beatles, even though the Beatles weren't around that long, you hear people go, I like early Beatles, I like late Beatles, I like middle Beatles, whatever. And even then, like artists that don't drop that often, if you have albums that are like big enough and feel monumental, you can get that. Yeah, I've talked about him on this channel before, but like Frank Ocean, if someone says they like, oh, I like 2016 or 2017 Frank. You know what they're talking about. They're talking about Blonde, but they're also talking about like Chanel. They're talking about like Endless. They're talking about like that whole aesthetic. They're talking about the weird singles that dropped after it. And if someone says they like early Frank, they're talking about Channel Orange, but they're also talking about Nostalgia Ultra. They're talking about some of the mixtapes before that. And yeah, I mean, like, it's just truly a sign of being a great artist. And as long as an artist keeps expanding, I think you can't define them as being in their prime. Whenever you're expanding, you're in your prime. If you stop expanding, you now allow there to be the argument that you've exited your prime. When I think of that, like I think of a band I'm listening to a lot right now, The, which I hate the name of the band, but The. And everyone kind of agrees that like their best album is one that the artist made. The main guy who's consistently in the band, the rest of the band was like a rotating cast of people, but it was an album he made when he was 22, but it's also compiled of things he made when he was like a teenager. So it's like really, really impressive work. It was inventive for the time, all of that, and it sold pretty well. And like oddly enough, some of his worst albums charted the highest, like reached second on UK's charts and stuff like that. And like it's weird to think of it as like his prime wasn't when he was selling the most, and it also wasn't when he was like artistically most mature, but he doesn't have such a great body of work that I would consider him to have like these multiple eras that should be like his prime. While at the same time I should be able to say like I don't think he ever lost his prime, because I think he always started trying to do something new. He never like gave up on his sound. So like he kind of had a prime like critically, he had a prime sales wise, but he never really lost his prime artistically. And I think to tell if you're in your own prime is just if you're having success creatively, like I'm talking about just creatively, not talking about like, of your life, but just creatively. It if you aren't getting frustrated that you're starting to exit your prime. You're allowing there to be a window for you to leave your creative prime. You're ending an era is when you stop getting frustrated, because that means you're stagnant. It means you're not pushing yourself at all. You're doing what's comfortable. And there should be times where you're trying to achieve a certain sound, and you're not getting it, and you need to push through that. And that's I think like the marker of a great artist is when not only do they have different eras that are considered great, but they get that because they've had this frustration. They could have played it safe, but they chose not to. They continually got better. I mean, this is kind of a shorter video than some of my other ones, but I think there's a lot of discourse around like, oh, this artist has exited their prime. They're in their 40s now. And it's like weird to me because like certain artists didn't release like their best work until like 37, 38 or older. Like Beck's Morning Phase is the fantastic album. I don't think it's his best, but like I think that's a phase of him that was good. Like Peter Gabriel, So was later in his career. Paul Simon with like Graceland, that was later in his career. There's multiple artists that have these like late pushes, and they don't really get the same discourse of what was their prime because it's acknowledged that because they kept pushing, they never left it. They never lost it. Even Dylan had so many eras, but he never really left his prime. Yeah. So that's kind of just to wrap this up. If you're getting frustrated as an artist, that's a good thing. Embrace that. It means you're pushing yourself forward. And yeah, avoid being stagnant. Avoid being stagnant. If you like this type of video, subscribe. Whatever. Leave a comment for any ideas for suggestions, and thanks for watching.